red jacket, you're glad you dug my jive.
Have some of this hidey ho with me. Have some nicotine, it's a scream and it's free. Have it in your food, you can have it with your tea. As you're thinking and you're pondering and wonder what it be. Hidey ho is a Callaway vibe. Where you're hip and you're clean and you ain't taking no drive. Speaking of jive, I think I was on the label that was a long time ago.
Welcome to Mount Hood Cigars. We have another podcast for you. Technically, this is Season 2, Episode 7, but we have a special guest today with us. Former Clackamas County Commissioner Mark Shull.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Adam and Rue.
Hey, hi. I'm here also.
Oh, good deal.
Thanks for acknowledging me.
And you brought a cigar for us to enjoy.
Yeah, we're doing H. Upman's The Banker, the annuity.
Okay.
I figured for what we got going on tonight, wanted to do that one. Kind of a little spicy with an Ecuadorian Habano wrapper. So we've got that, and it is going to be paired with the Whistle Pig 18-year rye whiskey, which we think, with the rye can have a little bit of a spice to it, as well as some of the other aromas that we like from earthy, maybe vanilla, kind of also. Anyway, we're going to combine all that tonight, and so I'm looking forward to it. The last time I did the H. Upman Banker, I actually had a scotch, and it was just okay.
Okay.
So I'm actually I'm curious to see if this is going to be a good pairing or not.
So far, I've had a couple sips on the Whistle Pig, and I like it. So
Yeah, I did too. It's very delicious.
we'll get into this, and we'll get a light up on these things.
You're talking so quiet there, Chris.
Okay. I decided to punch it this time. So.
Oh.
But we'll probably keep this podcast relatively short. We did have some technical issues, but I think we're up to speed now. We should be good to go. So, Mark, why don't you tell us a little about yourself? Like, you're former military, correct?
Yes, Chris. I graduated from Oregon State University, 1977.
Beavers.
Yeah,
All right.
Go Beavs. Graduated 12 June, 1977. A week later, I was at OCS, Quantico, Virginia, commissioned that year in the United States Marine Corps. Spent 12 and a half years in the Corps. Came back here to Oregon, to Sandy area, and built my home just north of town here. And had a business called Shull Design and Development for 10 years. And then 9/11 happened. I found myself back in the uniform and ended up spending 25 years in the military, retiring in 2010 as a lieutenant colonel.
Well, thank you for your service.
Yeah, thank you for your
My
service.
pleasure. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's a long time, too.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Marine Corps. My grandfather was a Marine as well, served in the Vietnam era.
Yeah.
And, tremendous guy.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
That's what he said. Yep, that's what he said.
So how many tours in Iraq did you do? Just
I did one tour in Iraq.
One tour, okay.
And that was 2003, 2004 tour.
Okay.
It was, I was in Iraq when George W. Bush said that the war was over. But the problem was nobody told the Iraqis about that. So the year I spent in Iraq, I spent the year getting shot at, mortared, missiles. So it was a turbulent time.
Absolutely.
So we're smoking this Banker right here by H. Upman, and it's kind of a medium stick I'm getting here. It's the flavors are, it's got a little bit of pepper notes coming off of it, and I'm tasting a little bit of like maybe a toffee. Toffee with a little bit of coffee. So it's
I definitely got the pepper notes.
yes, it's got a little bit of kick to it.
Sounds like lunch.
It does sound like lunch.
The pole is a little bit light and airy to where I'm normally used to. So hopefully that kind of tightens up here. We'll see. Maybe not for you guys. But. And you mentioned 100-year-old blend on this thing. Sorry about that.
Okay, swallow.
Well, I'm trying to let the whiskey wake up compared to the cigar notes, so I was just trying to see. But yeah, H. Upman, the brothers from Germany, actually went to Cuba like 100+ years ago and really got fascinated with Cuban cigar making and actually started getting into more of that than they did really even the banking so much. So this has been, I think this is a blend. I guess what happened, the story behind it is they kept the cigars and the blends, the recipe kind of in, I don't know, like a safety deposit box in the bank or whatever. Well, anyway, the bank burned down and they actually lost the recipe. And so basically they've been trying to recreate the blend. And they think they did, obviously decades ago. And that's what we kind of get now is what they think was more of what they actually made back in the day. So,
Well, Mark, being from the former collector commissioner, how do you see the county as it sits? I guess as of right now,
Okay.
the chairs that are there and the people that are kind of in charge.
Well, as you know, the commissioner that was elected last November in the general election for position 4 last month was arraigned on 8 felony charges and shortly thereafter resigned. So the board right now is looking to appoint somebody back to that seat. I got 88,000 plus votes in the general election, and I'm the only person in the county who was in that election.
Yeah.
Okay, so, and then since the other commissioner resigned last month, hundreds of people have asked me to apply. So I applied for reappointment. We'll see what the commission does in the next couple of weeks. And if I'm appointed, I'll continue to serve.
Oh, terrific! So you could actually possibly slide back.
Yeah, they could, if they choose to appoint me, I'll could be back in there by the 1st of May, for example.
Oh, cool.
But
Okay.
we'll see what happens. If they don't do that, I'll just take some time and readjust and see what happens next.
What is the process of putting someone back into? Has this happened before?
It has happened before. It happened back in 2017, in fact.
Okay.
And the Oregon State Constitution is very vague on the process. It's basically up to the other commissioners to decide how they're going to. Now, they could make a motion and to appoint somebody back, about 3 votes, and they'd be in the next day.
I see. Okay.
They've chosen to do an appointment process and take applications. Window closes on 9 April, and hopefully a week or so after that, they'll make their decision.
So it's a collective vote from the other commissioners.
Yes,
Fantastic.
it would require 3 votes
Okay, I got you.
to put somebody back in.
It's interesting that it doesn't
Yeah.
go back to the people. I don't
so
know.
why wouldn't we just be able to have another general election at this point to be able to?
Well, because to put on another major election to appoint somebody, it takes a long time, and you want to be able to appoint somebody back to that seat in a relatively short amount of time. So the way that the Constitution reads is that when this happens, the board will appoint somebody back to that seat, that empty seat, and then at the next primary, which would be 2026, that person, if they want to stay in there, they have to run again for re-election next year. So
I see.
that's the way it works.
Almost like a mandatory. Well, 2 years is kind of the limit there. You
Yeah,
would
yeah, you
fall
get,
into
yeah,
4
for an
years.
appointment, you got two years would be the limit.
I guess that's
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
fair, actually.
yeah.
I mean, I don't know about assigning them from the commissioner's seats, but yeah, whatever.
Well, that's why, so many people believe that the appointment process should be based on whoever else was in the general election.
Right.
And there's only 2 people in the general election. Melissa Fireside, who's now been arraigned on felony charges and is
Right.
gone, and me. That's it.
Good.
So that makes it easy. A lot of people are concerned that if they appoint somebody else based on whatever criteria that might be, it is disrespectful to the 88,000 who voted for me.
Right.
So we'll see what happens.
My concern is that they would just put someone in there that aligns more with their political views.
Well, that's a danger. That's a danger because, in fact, there's been some. You really can't say anything in the county without it coming back to me somehow, and some of the commissioners might want to have somebody more moderate. Now, as you know, I'm the commissioner who in 2023 made the motion to not fund DEI in the county budget, and that saved the people in the county some $10 million over 10 years, and that adds up. In the last 4 years, who's made motions during budget week to actually reduce the budget. And so I'm known in the county as the budget hawk, and which is a compliment to me.
Right.
But as we know, the cost of government, federal, state, county, city governments continues to grow, and it grows at the expense of the taxpayer.
That's right.
So somebody's got to step up and make the motions to actually reduce the cost of government.
Absolutely.
What is your thought on the mail-in voting, and do you see that changing?
Well, Oregon was the first state in the nation to go to all mail-in voting right around 1990. Prior to that, in the 1980s, we tested it. Many people in the state like the convenience of mail-in voting, but the problem is that there's too many ways that the system can go wrong. We saw here last year in Clackamas County another voting machine go down for a period of time that required hand counting. But my main concern about Oregon and our voting system right now is the voter rolls. We saw here last year where some 1,256 people had been registered to vote in Oregon through motor voter who are not citizens.
Yeah.
And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I personally advocate for voiding out the voter rolls and requiring everybody to re-register and register with a proper ID. So we know that everybody in the voter rolls is a citizen, a member of the county or the state, and is actually eligible to vote. And some people say, well, why don't we just modify the way that we update the voter rolls? Well, the problem with that is like if you sweep a dirt floor, you still have a dirt floor. And I think we need to go back just to start over again, rebuild our voter rolls, and to ensure that everybody who is a citizen who votes, their vote counts. Because if you have, say, even 4 or 5% of people in the state who are voting and shouldn't be, that could be 150, 175,000 people. That
That's a
could,
lot, yeah.
and that could negate your vote. Okay, so.
Now, I know the counter.
And, well, and let me just add that I believe that there's too many potential problems that we've seen over the years with mail-in voting. So I think we should go back to in-person voting with a photo ID, a proper ID, on Election Day, and maybe even having Election Day a day off so that everybody can go to the polls and vote in person. Now, that could be modified by requiring people who want a mail-in ballot to actually request it. Because right now, the ballots go out, and some of those ballots go to homes where somebody has moved. Okay, so this current system we have now is fraught with problems. And many people, many Democrats will tell you that there's no problem, but I'm going to be involved with the organization here in the near future. In fact, we're starting now to actually scrub through the process and come up with some new recommendations for ultimately going back to in-person voting on Election Day with a proper ID.
I know that a lot of some of the concerns to that is people possibly with disabilities, or if perhaps they're just a little bit older, they can't drive, they can't take a vehicle. Those are some of the issues that are coming up when it comes to countering the mail-in voting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think people who have disabilities, people who are not physically able to get to the polls, we should have a provision in our voting laws for them to receive a mail-in ballot. But again, even for those, I believe that for every voting cycle, we need to have a process where they actually request, I'm Joe Smith, I still live here at this address, and I request a mail-in ballot for this reason.
I like that.
Yeah.
It gives them an option, an opportunity. But I think with that, you would still need, just like you're saying, you would still need some verification.
Exactly right.
You almost need to apply for that.
Exactly.
Maybe there's an application in order to get that, and it might be some requirements to that.
Exactly right. Because right now, we have people leaving the state. They go to another state. What's supposed to happen when they should contact their county clerk. But when they go to the new state, that state is supposed to communicate to the old state, hey, we got Joe Smith registered here now. But that process does not work.
Right.
And so that it counts for thousands of people who are on our voter rolls who don't live in the state anymore.
And those ballots are literally being mailed to another state?
No.
Okay.
No. Those ballots would be mailed to the old address
Okay.
of the
see.
person,
Yeah.
even though they live in another state and are voting in another state.
Interesting.
So, yeah, you're never really going to get 100% perfection
Right.
unless you go to some system where you vote in person with an ID, or if you need a mail-in ballot, you request it each time.
I see.
Well, I think there's been a lot of corruption that's been going on in the election process, not even just in the state of Oregon, but all throughout the nation. And I think we need to go back to where we're able to have a lot better checks and balances. That's one of the things I think it's got lost where, especially in this state, with the mail-in voting, isn't it? I think the stat is since we've had mail-in voting, we haven't had a Republican governor. But right before we had mail-in voting, I think there was a Republican governor.
Oh, yes, exactly right. We haven't had a Republican governor, I think, since 1988. And another thing now I cannot tell you exactly why it happened, but last year, state level races, where we had 22 races, 22 Republicans, 20 of them lost. That's a huge defeat. And so again, the problem is when you have voting machines and you have the system we have now where the county clerks report their numbers on election day to the Secretary of State via a secure laptop. There's just too many ways that you can have potential problems. So going back, once again, voting on election day with an ID makes it so much more simple.
Right.
Well, as a voter in the state of Oregon, I'm becoming more and more disenfranchised about my vote because I feel like it doesn't matter. I'm just a vote that gets thrown in there that the other side sees and goes, okay, this is how many votes we have to come up with that aren't accurate, but are going to vote for our side of the party. For example, this last election, the one with Governor Kotek versus Drazen, I was really encouraged to see that Drazen was actually winning before we all went to bed. And she was winning by a really nice lead. But we woke up the next morning and all of a sudden Kotek had a really nice lead now above Drazen. And so I become obviously very suspicious of that and going, okay, how is that statistically logical that could actually happen? And I realized that, okay, that could happen. They're counting votes. You have a lot of several counties that are very heavy in one side of the equation. And so I get that, but it also starts making me suspicious and wondering, okay, is that legit, or is this really kind of where we're seeing the face of corruption with all this?
Yeah, well, Rue, the problem there is that the people cannot verify what's happening with these voting machines, right? So, again, going back to in-person voting on election day, it makes it simple. So you and your neighbors in your precinct are counting those votes. It makes it much more simple. Other countries have tried mail-in voting. France, for example, tried it. It was a disaster. 43 million people in France on election day, they all vote on one day, and they do it. We can do it too.
Well, we used to.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah, I remember doing that years ago. I started voting 1992 with Clinton, somebody else, Ross Perot.
Oh, yeah.
I remember Ross Perot.
Yep, I voted for Ross Perot. I was like, I love the
years ago.
business.
Yeah.
I love the businessman aspect. I always loved that idea. But obviously, Clinton. Honestly, I think Clinton did a pretty decent job. I was in the military with his leadership at the time, and I didn't have a problem with him. But that's what we did. Being from the East Coast, being from a smaller state, it was really easy. Everyone had their their spots that you would go to. Like if you're in this community,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
the community center
Yeah.
you'd go to.
Right.
So we all had our little
Yeah.
places to go. Our little way to do that. And so I think that's something that we could really easily do here, especially considering you have a lot of smaller towns out there. But with the way technology is, it shouldn't be that hard now to go in. You click who you want, pull a lever, submit it, and all that now goes to the state. And now you have kind of a body of people who are the IT people making sure no one's hacking in.
Yeah.
And I think that would be a lot better of a system than what we currently have. I also noticed too, my son turned 18 2 years ago, and I also heard it from other people whose kids just kind of were able at voting age. They started kicking all the ballots back because of the signature. They couldn't verify the signature.
Well-
This is my son's signature.
Okay, on the signature problem, the counties have a machine that verify the signatures. If the machine can't verify it, then it goes to another room where people visually look at
They
it.
check it, yeah.
But with motor voter, when those people were registered to vote, they signed their name on that little electronic pad, like you do when you
they're terrible
at
to
the
sign
store,
on.
which it never takes your signature
No, it's awful,
normally.
yeah.
It's terrible. So that's a huge problem too.
I see, absolutely.
Yeah.
So our local election here, I noticed I was keeping track on like some of the people that were running for office here, and it seemed like they stopped counting votes, and it just kind of froze. Like you would go and look at the updates on where people were sitting, and the votes kind of stopped, and it never seemed to like update. Like they didn't count all the votes before it just kind of stopped. I don't know if that was something. You go on the Clackamas County site to see kind of where things were sitting, and it just stopped updating.
Well, if the county clerk doesn't post on time every day for the 7 days after election
Yeah.
day, you could have some delays, and that's another problem too. Is that we have ballots coming in after election day that are supposed to be postmarked from the post office, and it just makes for a mess.
It does. It's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot to do.
And the more those ballots are handled from the time you put it in the mailbox, transported through the post office to the county clerk, there's just too many chances for problems to occur.
Well, and like with there was articles out there where there were postmen that were like stashing mail in the bushes, and it's like
It's happened. So anytime you have a system where there's potential for people to do nefarious
Yes.
deeds, it happens. But if you show up on election day with an ID card in the presence of your peers and your neighbors who are running your precinct, it makes it much more simple.
I remember doing it when I first was able to vote. We had to go to the school, go in, and they had the
too.
photo booths
Yep.
up, and
Actually, I really enjoyed
Yeah.
it. I kind of looked forward to that. I mean, may have been a line, but there was kind of strategic hours you could go. And I took my wife down, and we had a great time. It was in Clackamas County when I did that about 8 years ago.
Yeah, and another thing too, let me add this. Oksana and I went to Mexico here in January. When we got off the plane, as you go through customs there, they take a picture of you. And so they have a biometric
Right.
identification. They don't need a piece of paper. We could do that too with voting.
Right?
And that way, there's no chance of somebody having a fake ID.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a good thought.
I kind of like that.
It's another possibility, and it works.
I like that idea because so right now, the biggest issue with that, privacy. I don't want that because it'll affect my privacy. But we're in the day of social media, and everyone's online, and we already have faces of all of us out there.
Absolutely.
Anybody has a social media page of any kind, it's too late.
Yeah.
So I think that would actually be a really great idea.
Yeah, exactly right. It eliminates fake IDs.
So how do we start pushing towards that? Is that something that we can come together as a group and
Well,
make happen? That we
Could
start moving
that
in
get onto a ballot for people to vote for? Is that the step?
well, the biometric part.
Well, yeah, or just
Well, I mean,
getting
several of the things that we've spoken about here is
Yeah.
really kind of like, all right, can we get this now, pull it together and start making this kind of happen?
Yeah, well, we know that we need some sort of update on ID. We need a photo ID. Okay, like we've already talked about the need for redoing the voter rolls. So and that's something to look at.
Has Oregon always been a Democratic state, or has it just been more since mail-in voting started?
Well, we had a lot of Republican senators, Mark Hatfield. We had Republican governors. But since 1990, in mail-in voting has been dominated by the Democrats. And again, for the average citizen, they have no way of certifying that everything was fine.
Yeah.
That's why going back to mail-in or in-person voting on election day is really the only way to ensure that everybody's votes counted and there's no nefarious activity.
I think another way that I would like to see, especially in a state like Oregon being so vast and so many counties, is we do with the federal government where we do electoral college. I don't see why we don't kind of do the same thing where each county has 2 votes. Because I think if we did that being another option for this process, that would be something else. Okay, now this county went red, this county went blue, this county went red, and all of a sudden now we're able to kind of pull all those together, and it's no longer about the popular vote. Because the reality is we're not a democracy, we're a constitutional republic. A lot of people kind of forget that. That's why we've had so much controversy when it comes to like popular vote versus electoral college votes. And nationally, it's the electoral college is what really wins out. I think we saw that when the times back with, was it Gore and Bush? Gore got the popular vote, but Bush actually won the electoral vote. And I think that's something that really we should look at. Places like Oregon, Washington, your Montanas, when you get into your larger states, there's a lot of counties. Once you get out of the major cities, there's a lot of people out there still, but they're spread out a lot more. And I think the electoral college would actually be the most legitimate way to be able to get your voice heard as a group of your county.
Well, you got a point there. In the general election last year, just the race for the president, out of the 36 counties in Oregon, only 7 voted for Kamala Harris. The other, 28, 29 thereabouts, voted for Trump. Yet, in Oregon, Kamala Harris took the vote.
Yep.
And that happens all the time. I was in a restaurant here in town a while back, and a gentleman was sitting there, and he started talking to me, and he was from Eastern Oregon. And he saw my name tag, and he said, Commissioner, he said, I voted for the last 40 years. And he was from Malheur County. He said, I never once felt that my vote counted because Portland, Salem, and Eugene, whatever they want, they get.
That's what it seems like.
Yeah, so you got a good point there, Rue. Something worth looking at.
Bouncing back to the cigar, what do you guys think about this pairing here with the Whistle Pig?
As far as the cigar itself, I'm actually enjoying the cigar. Last time I had it, I was outside. When I'm outside, I don't get quite the notes that I do when I'm sitting in a place like this. But I've actually been really enjoying the cigar. I think Adam had mentioned some like toffee. I had some of those little notes. I have almost like kind of a burnt espresso kind of going on as well. And then the pepper, which always starts off really intense, has really backed off, and I now have a little bit of that, which is kind of nice. I don't like the intense pepper aspect of it, but I like a little bit there just to kind of tingle the retrohale.
So in the industry, we don't say burnt, we say charred. So,
Okay.
See, that's where he's still at that cigar lover and not aficionado. So,
Enthusiast.
Enthusiast.
Yeah.
You'll come around, man.
so no, I agree with what you said. That the cigar, mine is not really burning evenly. I've had to touch it up a couple times, but it's got a decent draw, and the flavors are there. I'm actually feeling it's with the amount of pepper that I'm kind of getting. It's probably more of a medium to full body. But the toffee's there. It's got some coffee notes, maybe a little bit of cocoa, and then the spices. And it's a tasty cigar.
It's a speedy stick, and I actually kind of like that. Like you're already down to the last third. But it's really good.
I'm sucking this one down pretty good.
It's easy to do though with this cigar, but this is very very nice. I noticed that the outer binder on this is a lot thicker than most cigars you'll find in any other shop. That was about an 1/8 inch. In fact, I set it down here. That is a thick outer leaf, which is nice. I like that.
How are you liking the pairing with the Whistle Pig?
This is brilliant. Very good.
Yeah.
I'm with it. Yep.
Good. Yeah, I actually would agree too. I think this is better than the Scotch I had a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
So I'm enjoying the rye. I think the rye offering that little bit of spice anyway, I think kind of enhances the cigar. the notes of the cigar.
Now, how much is this 18-year Whistle Pig?
If you were to buy this in the store or from some places that ship, it's about a $400 bottle.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yipers.
So
Yeah.
savor every sip.
That's right.
Yeah, don't put any ice in your drink.
Oh, my bad. It tastes
yeah,
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just full disclosure, I did not buy this bottle. This was a gift. So I'm not there to the level of buying a $400 bottle and then sharing it with my friends in a podcast.
No, he has those bottles at home.
Yeah.
In the house, not with his other stuff in the garage.
Yeah, exactly. But under the circumstances, it was free. I had to bust it open a month ago. So I was like, all right, you know what? Like, I think, Chris, you said, let's do something a little nicer.
Right.
This podcast, we got the banker.
Yep.
So we want to look like we're uptown.
Sitting down
We
with the
got
commissioner.
a fantastic guest speaker here. So we gotta play the part with the cigar and the whiskey.
I love it. You did
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
So, Mark, when is this vote supposed to happen for who they're going to put in the seat for the...
Well, the window for applications ends on 9 April. And I would expect within a week after that, the board will make their decision. Yeah.
I think a segue into a rumor that the county's kind of heard, and it concerns me as well because I have one. Taxing our wells. That's an interesting thing that I've heard that's come up. Have you heard anything about that? Is that a...
Well, there's a Senate bill that has to do with monitoring wells.
Yeah.
The governor appoints the Oregon State Water Board.
Okay.
And there has been some talk recently about restricting wells and that sort of thing. Personally, I don't think there should be restrictions on residential wells. Okay, you should be able to put down a well. Now the problem comes when we have like just within a couple miles of here, some of our nursery people who have wells that pump millions of gallons of water. That's a different thing. But to regulate wells, I think it's something that the state needs to stay away from.
Yeah. That was a little concerning. Also, someone else brought up.
The other thing too is, what are you doing? You're basically coming into my property now, and you're telling me how much water I can use on the well, but you're not providing any service for that money. You're basically saying, I just want to basically keep an eye on how much water you're using. It's none of your damn business how much water I'm using. That's why I'm out here. And if I was on city water, hey, completely, you guys are providing that for me. I'm paying for that. Like in Central Oregon, we have a property over there. We have a big water cistern. Okay, I pay to have the water delivered there to fill up the cistern, so I use it. So I get that. But when it's a well, I paid the money for the well. I have the septic system that I'm also having to kind of maintain. There's nothing that the state is offering me that I feel the need to compensate them for because they're putting money out on my behalf.
Yeah. And, counties like Klamath County, some of the counties in the south, they have shortage of water. And I understand that they're concerned down there about the number of wells. But for the most part of the state, it's something that the state should stay out of.
Absolutely.
Well, one of the reasons that we like to live out in the country is we want to be more self-sufficient. We don't want to be regulated by any governing bodies of any kind. And I'm in unincorporated community, more governed by the county than I am any cities, and I like that. That's where I want to be. I want to be able to use my land the way I want. And that also kind of segues in some other things, is I'd love to be able to have the opportunity without, the government stepping in and saying, if I want to be able to have an accessory dwelling unit, or I want to be able to have a fifth wheel that I could rent to somebody, or it's one of my family members who's on hard times, to be able to put them up in that area.
Yeah.
Especially considering we're having such a massive homeless crisis going on in Portland and down the I-5 corridor. I think that would be an easy solution right now, that the government doesn't even have to, we need to build more Section 8 housing. We need to start building more of these little villages with these pods. No, you need to let us now be the people who can also take care of the people that mean to us, like our family members or friends who need help or whatever. I don't think that the government needs to come in and say, oh, well, you have an acre. I don't think you should have anything else other than the property. Well, why not?
Well, yeah, I advocate for property rights and as few regulations as possible. You can build in Clackamas County an accessory dwelling unit.
10 by 10, correct? Without a permit.
Well, no, you can have an accessory dwelling unit. It's actually a kitchen, bedrooms, 1,200 feet or less.
Right.
And now, since last year, you can also put a RV on a piece of property in Clackamas County.
You can't do this.
You
now.
can do that, yeah.
Because it was,
Yeah.
I'm assuming prior to that, it had to be a hardship case, which had to go,
Yeah.
a mailing had to go to your neighbors, and your neighbors pretty much had to sign off on it.
But as of last year, that changed in the county.
I think you still have to pay a permit, though, if you're.
You still need a permit,
Which is another way of
so,
taxing
yeah.
on people.
Chris, one of the questions you had was about TriMet and Max Line
Right.
coming up. Let me just talk a little bit about mass transit.
Yeah, thank you.
Mass transit only pays off in high-density areas. When you start looking at mass transit in rural areas, ridership's down, and you need more augmentation tickets. Bus fares don't cover the cost of it. And so the only real profitable mass transit line in the greater Portland area is 82nd Avenue, which is TriMet's highest ridership route. But, last year, TriMet lost $850 million.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, $850 million.
Wow.
Ticket sales aren't even coming close to paying for its operations. Now, somebody mentioned something about, what about putting a light rail out towards Sandy? Well, that is way, way expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Somewhere around $900 million a mile for a light rail. The way it's built in Oregon. The last one was about 850, 900
Which is crazy.
million bucks. It's crazy. We needed $450 million bucks a couple years ago to widen I-205, and we couldn't get the money. But any time that someone suggests that we build another light rail, it's just totally ridiculous. It's way too expensive.
The last one that was built was from the Milwaukee down to Oregon City, right?
The Orange
And
Line.
if I remember right, that was voted down by the people. That's what I was told.
But they
at least.
still went
They
ahead and
built
did it.
And they still built it, and it's been losing money ever since.
So what gets me is that public transportation is not something people feel safe using. I mean, the buses aren't really safe. Max definitely
is-
isn't really safe, but yet the county, they like to take our main roads that we have and let's eliminate a lane and make a bike lane to make traffic more congested. So maybe more people would use the public transit. That doesn't make any money.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because you got these roads that have always been 2-lane roads, and then now they're a 1-lane road with a bike lane or with a parking spots on the side, which is, it's congesting things and making your commute longer. And so it's kind of.
Well, Clackamas County has got the biggest rural population of any county in the state.
Yep.
And we need roads. We need efficient roads. We've been working on a concept for the Sunrise Corridor from Clackamas out to 172nd, right?
I remember that. Yep.
That design is in the works, but we need a concept from 172nd all the way out to Highway 26. Clackamas County does not have a viable east-west highway. Okay, we got Highway 211 out of Estacada to Molalla, and we got 212. 1 lane each way. It's ridiculous. As you know, in the morning and in the evening, it's backed up a mile or two to get through Damascus. So,
Absolutely.
and the other thing too is when people suggest that we need to get away from individual cars and trucks to some sort of mass transit for rural areas, it doesn't pencil out.
No.
The people out here that live in dispersed areas of the county need to be able to rely on their vehicles. And so when it comes to efficiency, we need good roads, good transportation, quick commute times. And for those people who are concerned about the environment and internal combustion engines, well, we've seen over the years how efficient internal combustion engines have become. They're very clean now. And some of the car manufacturers are working on not EVs, but hydrogen powered.
Yeah.
And a combination of hydrogen powered and electrical, where the electricity is generated within the car. You don't need to ever plug it in. So we need to be able to rely on the advancements in technology. That's where our cleaner environment is going to come from. It's not going to come from taxing the people more to pay for carbon tax and that kind of thing, which the government's not going to do a darn thing with to help out.
So, we have our gas taxed a lot, and that's what goes towards the roads and this and that. But they're pushing so much that we're going to be done with motorized vehicles. It's all going to be electric at some point. Well, those electric vehicles aren't paying any sort of tax because they're not getting fuel. But rumor was that Washington is trying to put on the ballot about starting to charge like a power tax, or like for EVs, you have to pay a tax on that. And typically what happens in Washington ends up coming, and we follow suit pretty much right away. So have you heard anything about electric vehicles starting to get taxed for?
Well, there's been some talk about having an extra charge on your vehicle registration. Okay, some other people have said we need to have a tire tax because even though electric vehicles have tires. But here's the problem. In the current biennium, the budget for the state of Oregon is $121.7 billion. Now, ODOT got $5.7 billion of that. And when people say to me, we need to toll our roads, the first thing I say is, we need to audit ODOT. Where's that money going? What is the priority of projects? Let's make sure that that money is being spent properly in the best interest of the people of Oregon. And when you look at what's happening in the federal government with DOJ and the hundreds in just 6 weeks, pushing $1 trillion worth of fraud, waste, and abuse, I can't help but think that if DOJ came to Oregon, that we would find a similar amount of fraud, waste, and abuse and inefficiency. Okay, so out of that 121.7 billion, which Salem says is not enough, we need more taxes. I say, wait a minute, we need less government. Yes. We need less government, and because right now, when I talk to families who 20 years ago were able to save money, but then things got more expensive. The wife had to go to work. And now, in many families, both the husband and wife are working. They're not saving any money. And actually, they're having to go max out their credit cards to keep going.
They're struggling.
The idea to tax people more is absolutely insane. It will not work. Because at this point in time, the families and small business, they're tax saturated. I bet, here it is, the 5th of April. We got 10 days, till the 15th of April. And everybody I've talked to who's done their taxes this year, they're just dumbfounded at the cost of their taxes this year. It can't go up anymore. You need to cut the cost of government. And of course, people in government and the bureaucrats will always say, wait a minute, we need more taxes. Why? Because they need more money coming in every year in order to have more raises for the people. In Clackamas County last year, you spent $197 million on payroll for 2,400 people.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
Yes. And remember, for every dollar that we pay in payroll, we have to pay somewhere around 25 cents to go down to PERS in Salem. So, the government's got to come down, and that means that some of the services that are being provided now, they need to go away. because we can no longer afford it.
Right.
You know, last year during the budget cycle, I made a motion to direct county staff to identify all functions that the county's performing that are not core services. Okay, I'm talking about core services being safety, roads, just basic stuff, and give a cost for each one of those categories. So when federal money dries up, because I said for 4 years, by the third quarter of 2025, federal money will dry up to the extent that all the states and the counties are going to have to really tighten their belt big time. In Clackamas County, every year we probably blow through 120 million thereabouts in federal grants. And when that goes away, you're going to have a plan to either reduce services and reduce payroll, or you have to tax people more. And the idea for increasing the rate on property tax is absolutely a no-go.
Yeah.
You cannot do that. Anybody in politics who would recommend an increase in the property tax rate is going to fail every time.
I find, so back to the transportation aspect of roads, we've been dumping so much money into MAX systems that really don't benefit anybody, especially the people out here. Here we are, we're basically funding the MAX system. But one of the crucial arteries of our state for commerce is 26. And I feel like it's a bottleneck, especially when you start getting past Sandy. I believe that we need to go back to the Sunrise Corridor and focus on that, where we can basically have a 4-lane highway from I-205 at least to Highway 35 that goes over to like Mount Hood Meadows or Hood River, because Mount Hood now is the playground of Portland.
Yeah.
So you have all these people in Portland now coming out here. This is where the need is. It's not more max lines, mass transportation, anything like that. It's to be able to try to get up and over the mountain in a reasonable time. But if you go up through there and you hit there after the ski times or mountain biking times, you can't get through. You're sitting there for 2 to 3 hours. I've been caught in that before. And yet, you have a couple passing lanes going up and over, and that's it. So I think if we're going to focus on anything for roads, we need to focus on that. And there's a tremendous amount of people who use those roads for playing, and we have that as a commerce avenue for all these trucks that are basically delivering to Bend and back. So we need to have that being kind of the focus, I think, more than putting in another MAX system somewhere.
Exactly right. Well, like I said, we're working on the concept from Damascus to 172nd. It's a step in the right direction. But the concept from 172nd out to Highway 26 is still undefined. But one of the options would be to come out of, to build the Sunrise Corridor, and then come around the southern part of Damascus, leave 212 the way it is, okay? Because if we have a new road taking us around the southern part of Damascus and maybe around to Sandy and up, that alleviates traffic between Highway 26 through Boring and to Damascus. And so, but
You're basically talking about taking 224 and widening it from Carver.
that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But we need to be able to move rapidly, 2 lanes each way, and ideally get around Sandy. Because what's happening in Sandy, 60 years ago, the traffic through Highway 26 in Sandy was bearable.
Right.
Now it's ridiculous.
There's a
When we
lot.
came in here this evening, traffic was back.
Oh, yeah.
2
Right.
miles.
Another thing that was brought up, and I have got a lot to say about it, but toll roads. And I know the idea was to toll 205. The reason why I do not like that idea, because that is a major throwaway that a lot of people rely on, and now you're kind of forcing them to pay something that they are used to not paying for. I visited Colorado about 15 years ago, and what I liked about their system is if you wanted to navigate around Colorado and didn't have to pay, there are roads available and you can
Right,
do so.
yeah.
If you wanted to get there quicker and go around very, very quickly, like I'm talking 20 minutes, you could do that, but you'd have to pay the tolls. And
Yeah.
they weren't that bad, actually.
Right.
I did both routes and it wasn't too bad.
Well, remember, in 2021, when ODOT really started talking about the potential for tolling I-205,
Right.
I said from day one, not no, but hell no, because tolling, once it starts, it never ends.
Yep.
You can ask the people in Pennsylvania how that works. The other thing too is that ODOT, their intent was to toll all lanes, which was the first time that would have been done in the United States. Usually you have a toll lane and you got a no toll lane.
Right.
Okay, so that was a problem. The other thing too is that the estimate for the cost of driving on a tolled I-205 from Highway 213 out to Stafford Road, for somebody who traveled back and forth 5 days a week, 50 weeks out of the year, it'd be $2,400 per car.
No way.
Crazy.
$2,400,
Wow.
which would have become maybe the third highest tax for most families. And if you had the dad and the mom having to travel that, it could be twice, 2 times 2,400. So that wouldn't work. The other thing too was the estimate of efficiency for tolling was horrible. The estimate was that 70 cents out of every dollar tolled would go to overhead,
Oh, wow.
leaving some 30 cents maybe to go to steel and concrete improvements for highways.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous.
Yeah.
The other thing, you'd have to set up a very expensive infrastructure to run the tolling program. It was like $40 million just to set up the gantries, just for I-205.
It would slow traffic down even more, like having to go through.
Well, and you know, the whole thing about administering the tolls using electronic tolls, you have to pay somehow. There had to be a process for you to pay, and it's just a big nightmare. So we need to go back to something that's more efficient, easily administered, that's not going to cost the people so much.
Well, two things. One, being from the East Coast, I grew up in the land of tolls.
Yeah.
And pretty much all of us would just get an easy pass.
Yeah.
And you would put money on it every month. You drive through, so you're not even slowing down. If you didn't have an easy pass because you're a tourist, whatever, you would go through little checkpoints, whatever, to pay. So the easy pass were convenient, but you're still paying it. The other thing, though, is this is a double tax now because we're already, as carbon vehicles, we're already paying for the tax at the pumps. So now you're charging us for that, and you're also charging us for tolls. And like you said, we're already taxed out, not even just taxes, but just for me running a business right now, not just the taxes have been going up, but also the utilities for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Your
Big
water,
time.
your sewer, power. I mean, PGE
Yeah.
now, I think, has cumulatively gone up some 40+% now.
Yeah.
I have several PGE bills because of running a business, and you're talking about those things increasing 40%. Well, that's cutting into my profit margin, which is what I would like to have to be able to put back into my business, specifically even my payroll. So we don't have that option anymore. We don't have the money. We don't have the money in our pockets to be able to say, okay, well, we're going to come up with a toll road now. Like you said, people are already, to a dual income household right now that are already maxed out. They're on their credit cards, and now on top of that, we're trying to basically say, oh, you know what, let's start tolling these roads where people don't have any money. That's the money that would be going to groceries, to gas, to vacations, to time spent with their family, to being able to buy some of the fun things. That's why we go to work.
Exactly right.
Not just to put a roof over our head, but to be able to have a 1 or 2 weeks a year where we take our family on vacation and live our lives like enjoying family time. So that actually steals from us to be able to pad these bureaucrats' pockets, because that's really what goes on. For $900 million for 1 mile of max tells me that there's absolute fraud, waste, and corruption.
It's ridiculous. It's totally ridiculous. But one thing that I took a lot of heat from was being the budget hammer in the county, because I consciously, in everything I did, strove to protect the family and small business. And like I think I told you before, the other tools I used, every decision I made, for everything that came across my desk for a vote, I had 4 criteria for me to vote yes on it. 1, it had to respect the Constitution as amended. 2, it had to respect Judeo-Christian values, the basis of law, and the basis of how to get along in a civil society. It had to protect the family and small business. And 4th, it had to ensure law and order 24/7, 365, no exceptions. If one of those 4 was missing, I didn't support it, because I knew it would fail. And the bottom line is, a government is supposed to be of the people, for the people, by the people, not government for the sake of government.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay? And like I told you, the budget also, last year, or in this current year, for Clackamas County is 1.9. Now, I expect that the budget that's going to be proposed in May is going to be over $2 billion.
Wow.
Okay? 1.9 billion this year, 2.1 billion next year. And I won't support that. I want to know how that can be reduced, okay? And especially in view of the fact that, like I said 4 years ago, by the third quarter of 2025, federal money is going to dry up. And the county was burning through 100 million plus federal grant money every year. And that mostly went to housing support, health services, and a few other things. But when that's gone, the option, you got two options. You reduce services, and you cut payroll, or you find out how to tax people more, which won't fly.
Right.
It cannot fly.
So, I'm going to change the topic a quick second. So, transgenders in sports. So, in Oregon, was it the governor who wasn't getting on board with what Trump put in policy? And if they're not going to be on board with that and they're going to kind of go their own direction, what happens when Trump eliminates federal funding for Oregon because they're not following what he had put in place?
Good question.
Well, I think, too bad, so sad. You know, if Oregon wants to be a rogue state, they pay the price. But I tell you what, if I had, my sons are grown now, but if I had a 12-year-old daughter in school and I found out that some boy was, playing on a team against her, I'd be pretty upset about it. And I can tell you right now, there are two genders, male and female, end of sentence.
Amen.
And I don't care what somebody tells me.
Right.
They believe. They can believe there's all, a menagerie of genders. That's up to them. But when it comes right down to it, you got two genders.
Yep.
It's XX chromosomes for the girls, XY chromosomes for us guys. End of sentence.
I agree with that.
And somebody can come through that door dressed like a woman, but when it gets right down to it, if they still have XY chromosomes, they're not a woman. It doesn't matter what they do, how much lipstick they put on, they're still a man.
Right.
Sorry about that,
Right.
folks.
Something back to the road side of things in mass transit, as a business owner, I have to pay TriMet and San Diego Metro taxes. Every quarter, it comes out of my payroll, and I have to do that. I pay about approximately $4,000 a year to support TriMet and San Diego Metro. And that's money that I don't feel like I should be paying. It doesn't benefit me. We don't have anybody that I take care of in my businesses that use any mass transit, and that $4,000 could be going right back into my business, specifically to my payroll, and giving raises to people. Because what's happening right now is salaries are going up everywhere. Because if you want to keep good people, you got to pay them more, because that's where the society is right now. And so I'm basically, being taxed, and utilities are killing me, to where I can't just all say, you know what, this person's been here, they're doing an awesome job, I'm going to get more money, because the money's not there, because it's being taken from all these different hands out that I have to pay, and I have no choice in that matter.
Yep.
And it really annoys me that San Diego Metro on the back of their buses is pretty much said supported by local businesses. It's not by choice. I don't have that choice, and they take it away from me. But to spend $4,000 a year for that is just ridiculous.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean, take a citizen initiative to go about eliminating those services. I mean, it could be done. And it might have to be done because, the county, money comes through the county every year to support San Diego Metro and some of the other mass transit, the bus services out this way. And a lot of times when I see those buses, big buses, there are 2 or 3 people on at most. So
It goes by our shop every day, and I don't see any more than 2 or 3 people. on
yeah,
that thing.
exactly right.
I have my business in Estacada. Same thing happens there. It's multiple times a day, and I rarely ever see more than probably 3, 4, maybe.
Well,
Well, we
5
got
people.
those trolleys that come through right down my road, and I'm not on a main street, but you you can call and they'll come pick you up, and it's it's. I don't think they even charge for that trolley. You just come in and get it. And
Yes, yeah.
Taxpayer dollars, right?
Well, that might, with the budget crunch that's coming, some of these things have to be cut out.
yeah.
Right. Well, that end of that cigar was really nice. I had a bunch of cedar notes, is what I picked up, and it smoothed out really nicely. I really enjoyed that cigar.
Let's go ahead and rate the cigar really quick. Sure. It was a good cigar. It burned well, had a good taste. I'm going to say I would give this probably a 91, 92. It's an enjoyable, like medium to full flavored cigar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think the enjoyable experience to me was just the conversation. Again, that's kind of a conversational cigar. It was perfect for this. I would give that a solid 90. I like that medium to full body. There we go.
Yeah, I'm a 91, just because of various things. One, it had a good pull. For the most part, the burn was really good.
Yeah.
I did have to touch it up twice. Not a big deal. Sometimes just the way you smoke. I was smoking pretty fast. Not going to happen. I like the flavors, especially in this environment versus outside. I had a lot more of the notes that I was able to pick out. So I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the flavors. Great Ecuadorian Habano wrapper. You got that little spice and pepper with that. I enjoyed that. I think pairing it with the rye whiskey was a great idea. So definitely a 91 for me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys, and Mark.
Yep.
Appreciate you.
Thanks,
coming
sir.
on.
Thank you, Rue.
Mark,
Adam,
we're hoping
Chris.
that you do get that seat back on the city
Right.
council, and if not, we're looking forward to what you go for next, and definitely hope to see you in office again soon.
Well, thank you. I don't feel like giving up. I look at my sons and my new grandson and other people's children, and that's what we got to keep fighting for. So, like I said, we'll see what happens this month with the appointment back to position 4 county commission, and if I don't get appointed, I'll regroup and come up with another plan.
There we go. Well, I think we all learned something
Sounds good.
today. So,
Yeah.
thank
Thanks,
you
sir.
guys for tuning in. Appreciate
you guys.
you.
Thank you
All
very
right, guys,
much.
we'll see you
Like and
next time.
subscribe.